Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, we are going to, I think we'll do our last part of this In Case You Missed It podcast. It depends on how long it goes or like how much she says that I have to talk about. But they were just talking about Ozempic, body positivity influencers, all that kind of stuff. Virgie just said that people in recovery from the toxic ritualistic should be looking at body positivity creators, and that if they downsize or, start shifting the way they look, that's triggering and therefore like they're letting down their audience or something. That's basically what she was arguing, if I remember. So we're going to go ahead and continue from there.
For whom these people were part of their recovery, and what does that mean for them?
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about these creators, these body positive creators who do ultimately say yes, whether it's because they were emailed or because they themselves heard about this and decided to try it. We did an episode on Remy Bader, who I'm sure you've, because she's often brought up in these conversations, and it's hard for me to know. I think where I land on it is, again, like to blame her is like a very individualistic way of approaching this, when she is under the exact same like societal pressures that and in a way that, especially as a creator who has made her body a part of her content,
I'm always really surprised when they say things like that, because they act as if there's zero pressure to stay big, or there's zero pressure to continue to drastically overeat, or all of these things. Like, if we're going purely based on societal pressure, it so obviously goes in the other direction. At least in the United States, it is so obviously in the other direction, to where it's like, it is almost laughable to act as if society in the US is encouraging people to be incredibly thin. Now, I don't know, it could be different for Gen Z, it could be different at this time for them. But as far as for people who are older, there's no way in hell. Like, I'm going to say that, zero way in hell. If you're over 30, you are not being encouraged at all to do this. Which, that is a huge swath of the population, a huge amount of people that are not being told that they have to be as skinny as they can by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, it's the exact opposite. That if you try at all, it's a problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's laughable. It is laughably ridiculous. Even within like some elder Gen Zs, like I've seen people that are, 27-ish, like around there. They're still getting a lot of pressure. Like, I did an article about like these friends in England, and they said like Ozempic ruined the friend group and all this stuff. And I mean, that's pressure to stay a certain size too. So I will always say till the cows come home, this issue is very individualistic. People respond to pressure within this totally differently depending on the person. Some people will rebel and they'll be like, well, I'm going to just try to downsize as much as I can, and it can even go into a toxic ritualistic spiral on the opposite side. Or people will say, I'm going to be as big as I want, and I'm going to just go for it, and there's nothing you can say about it. Or there's going to be some people who try to conform. But conformity comes in many forms. Conformity can be, I'm going to stay small fat so that I'm just the fat friend because that role feels safe for me. So I'm going to downsize, but I'm only going to downsize to this point because I don't want to actually change my identity. I don't want to experience a mid-size crisis. I don't want to experience a mid-size princess crisis. So I'm going to just stay small fat forever because at least this way I can stay nice. That's conformity. That's social pressure. Same thing with, oh my gosh, I'm mid-size. I hate it. I hate the way people are treating me. I want to do anything to get out of this as fast as possible. I'm going to either do too much or too little to get out. That's also social pressures. But people respond differently. You don't know which way somebody's going to go. you know? And on this channel, I always advocate against fat acceptance. I don't think it should be accepted at all. I just don't. I don't think obesity should be accepted. I don't think being overweight should be accepted. I don't think it's acceptable. I just don't. And I'm going to make my point, and I'm going to be this voice in the culture that says that. But people will respond on an individual basis to the things that I say and to what everybody says. So no, it's not, your body size is not a democratic process. It is the dumbest thing in the world to act like that's the case. In fact, that is literally why toxic ritualistic behaviors exist, because it is something that we have control over. Literally, that is why it exists. Because it's often people who feel out of control that are looking for something to control. And you have control over it on an individual basis. So I don't know what the hell she's even saying with that. That is one of the dumbest things I've heard in a long time.
Has opened up an audience who feels that they can speak about it way more openly than, I mean, you know, people with fat bodies online often are spoken about, but like, especially when she's made that part of her content.
Everybody online is spoken about, unless if you're not relevant at all.
She's under so much scrutiny about her weight fluctuating even a little bit. And so like, when I see this happening, I know there were a lot of people who felt betrayed and that their boundaries were crossed, and I totally understand.
Toxic ritualistic reinforcement. People are using other people to keep themselves into that mindset so that they can continue to be INGE. That's what it's for. Oh no, you took away that drive. I'm mad at you.
And at the same time, I totally understand her being like, this is awful. Like, it is so hard to exist like this, not only online, but in the world. And this is a thing that can just make that go away. Like, what?
Nobody owes you reinforcement. I don't owe you reinforcement, and I will never give it to you. I've told you guys many times. I've still had people, not quite as recently, but a lot this year, particularly in the mid-size phase, there were a lot of people that were really expecting me to reinforce their DIS order. And I would say it flat out in plain writing. I will not reinforce it. I have been very clear. I will never reinforce it. And they still try. People are really weird. And you have to be careful even within anti-FA, because people within it also have problems too. So there's a lot of this, like, you know, there can be unhinged stuff within anti-FA too. You have to be able to recognize it so that you don't go along with it, because people will use anything to reinforce themselves. So that's why I don't get on here. I don't bash appearances. I don't do stuff like that, because I know that it's a way for people to reinforce. I always point at the logic. I don't reinforce. You know, honestly, I probably would be a bigger channel if I did, because that's what people want. You know, they really want it, but it's like, it's not going to happen here. And I'm not talking necessarily about like motivation or whatever, or that anybody who talks about it is doing that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that that's what people that have the issue are looking for. That's what they want. They want you to reinforce maybe a reductive side of their cycle. Or like for example, I'm going to keep saying it and it pisses people off, but I'll keep saying it. They want me to tell you it's an addiction. It's not. It isn't an addiction. But they want me to say that because that reinforces their cycle. So they can believe, okay, I'm an addict. I'm clean right now. Even though it's all bullshit. It's all like a game. It's a game that you're playing with yourself. And then it's like, oh, I'm clean. Oh, you know, it's like you're cosplaying as an addict. Oh no, I got off the wagon. Now I have to spiral for like 6 months because after being clean for one, I've done all that shit. It's a game. It's bullshit. And I call it out and people don't want to hear it. They don't, because it's kind of like, it's just been tricky this year for me, publicly. But it's kind of like My job is to pour water on the fire of the toxic ritualistic. My job is to be a wet blanket for that kind of thing. Why? Because I want you to get out. I don't want you to stay in it. I'm not playing into it. We're not doing that. And that's what I've done a lot this year. And, I think that there can be other approaches or whatever that are more fun or entertaining, perhaps next year when I'm not in a deficit. But that's what a lot of this year has been. It's been a lot of discipline. It's been a lot of me being a wet blanket, me putting out those fires constantly. And you kind of have to. Like, you have to do that for yourself too, because people don't understand how constant these internal repetitious monologues are. And your answer to those things has to be just as repetitive too, and just as disciplined. No, I'm playing a game with myself. No, this isn't real. No, I'm being stupid. No, this is wrong. The way I'm thinking about this is wrong. The way I feel about this is wrong. Because yes, your feelings can be wrong, which is also very unpopular to talk about. But that's more of a general population issue. But again, a lot of the cultural trends and a lot of the ways in which we talk about emotions and all this kind of stuff and affirmation first, that kind of thing, it does not help with this issue at all. It is a huge issue. It's why it's gotten so bad. And the fact that we only focus on the reductive side, that's another issue. People are so incredibly careful about if you are being overly reductive. They're so paranoid about it, even. Paranoid, I would say. But when it comes to BINGE, there's zero paranoia. There's like the most lax standard, the most, not even not paranoid, but literally encouraging of it. Like, people will be literally encouraging of you being in that issue, to where it's so ridiculous that stepping outside of it publicly has become an activistic feat. That's how crazy it is here. And I think people just don't understand, or they don't care. And I get it if you're just not in it and you don't care. But for people who are in it, the toxic ritualistic world is very loud. And you can hear it in this podcast. This conversation, I don't think would make sense to a lot of people. This conversation is a toxic ritualistic conversation. This is something that all these women, they probably have an issue, because it doesn't make sense. If you were just talking about this to general people, they'd be like, what? Huh? What are you even talking about? What do you mean somebody lost weight and you're upset about it? What? Huh? That's what most people think. And I think when you're in it and you're in it deep, you think everybody's like you, and it's not true. So let's continue.
What are your thoughts on the creators who do say yes to these things?
Yeah, I think what's challenging is, I have a lot of thoughts, but ultimately I don't believe in individual blame either.
Yeah.
That's where I land. I think the challenge is this, that there's not a lot of people, like, I think what people really want is this massive, like, opportunity to follow people who maybe have different views about intentional weight loss. I think what's really challenging, right, is like we're watching a lot of people, a lot of visible content creators kind of take GLP-1s for intentional weight loss. I think if I were going to break it down, I think what we're longing for is a diversity of response. And I think what's really hard is, like, I don't know, for example, if people would be coming down as hard on Remy Bader if they had like the 1,000 other people who are just like, yeah, that's not for me. I think in the ideal world, right, like, I guess for me, again, when you look at the research of intentional weight loss, it's just so unequivocally, like, it just doesn't work longitudinally for most.
Most people are not on a GLP-1. Let's be clear about that. Most fat people are not on a GLP-1. So that doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense as far as an argument, or as far as, I think that's why, because there's so many fat people that are on it. You're going to look for it though. Why? Because you want to be triggered. You want to be mad. So you'll find somebody that's using Ozempic so that you can be mad about it. Like, I don't know. I mean, I can kind of understand because when you're in it, you're delusional. Let's just be real about it. You are delusional. It doesn't make sense to do any of the things that we do when we're in the problem. They don't make any sense. So when you're in it deep like that, you need to understand, like, subconsciously, you will look for things to piss you off just so you can continue. That's what it's for. It's the same thing on the overly reductive side. People do that all the time when it comes to size. It's like find something to piss you off to keep you going. That's a toxic ritualistic thing, which, by the way, be careful with that. That's why I tell people who are not in this issue to be careful about things like revenge body. I think it can work, but you need to not go crazy with it, and you need to still keep reality and rationality, you know? But within the problem, we have to be very careful about things like this, about intentionally stirring up drama, intentionally getting angry, intentionally looking for something to be upset about, even if that is like politically, for example. People will be like, I want to be INGE. Let me look up what Trump is doing so that I can be upset. You need to be careful about that stuff. It's not, you can't necessarily trust what you're doing. You get me? Especially if you're super morbidly obese, if you're very obviously, at least to me, in the issue where it's severe, you have to question these things. I had to question those things. I had to question my relationship with politics. I had to question my relationship with boy drama. I had to question my relationship with drama, period. I had to question if there were certain toxic ritualistic drives I had to stay poor or to maybe sabotage my finances so I could be upset about it. And these are very difficult questions that we don't want to think about because we don't want to think that we're on a path of self-destruction in many ways. But in order to sustain an extremely toxic ritualistic lifestyle, that's the best way I can put it, in the way that YouTube will let me, when it is severe, everything has to be about it because it is ridiculous. Like, I think about how much I used to weigh. I was in the 370s for a majority of that time. And I am just like, I don't know how the fuck I sustained that. I was literally eating 5,000 calories a day, which to me, that wasn't even to be INGE. That was to maintain. It was like 5,500. That is so ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. It's not practical. It doesn't make sense. It's expensive. It was a lot of work. When I think about it in retrospect, like, everything is a lot of work at that size. It's hard to walk. It's hard to breathe. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to tie your shoes. It's hard to do anything. So it's like the amount of effort that was going into sustaining that system just so that my brain could have some kind of easy stimulation or I could have some kind of an escape. That is something that you really need to think about if you're on that path, and do not let it get worse. It can get worse. You know, it doesn't always start out severe. It didn't for me. It started out as, I'm comfort eating today. That's what it started as. You know, and you have to be, I will still say you have to have experience. I really think you have to have experienced some kind of trauma to develop this issue. I don't think it happens because just randomly or whatever. I just don't think so. But when you start, it's usually small. And I think the first sign is you become obsessed with how you look. I think that's usually the first sign is like, I don't look good. 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 You're looking in the mirror. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I look. I don't know. And then it's, I'm just comfort eating. I don't feel good. I'm comfort eating today. And it's like, I can think about me having those thoughts at like 10 years old, 12 years old. And it was mild. And then it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then by the time I was in high school, it was totally severe. And by that point, when it's severe, it's really hard because it becomes ingrained. And then, as I got older, I was playing more with the reductive side of it so that because it increases your appetite. So if you cut out certain nutrients and stuff, then your appetite skyrockets. So then when you are no longer clean in the addiction pathway, quote unquote, that you supposedly have, then when you finally have those nutrients you've been depriving yourself of, then you have such a high appetite and it can feel exhilarating. It's an exhilarating, even euphoric feeling to the brain to have what you've denied yourself. And it's wrong. It's something you're doing on purpose. And maybe it's subconscious, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's subconscious or not. I think there is a thing as subconsciously on purpose. But it's because, why? Because then when you're not doing it, then you're listless. Then your brain is damaged. Your brain has to heal. You have massive dopamine and serotonin issues and fluctuations, and you have all this crap, and your appetite goes way down. And a lot of people don't want that. And that's why Ozempic is horrifying to them, because it makes your appetite go down. And some people will use that as part of a reductive part of a toxic ritualistic cycle, which you have to remember, these things can last a long time. You can have a very long-standing reductive cycle. I don't think it usually lasts more than a year, though. I don't think so. But, 6 months, easy. If you're severely toxically ritualistic, a 6-month cycle is easy. Look at Amberlynn Reed. She has so many Ozempic arcs. Lasts a few months, then she goes back. Then it's this, it's that. It's a cycle. It's a constant cycle. She's a very good example of somebody whose whole life is oriented around it. But she uses her audience often to reinforce her cycle. So she'll do something to piss off her audience so that she can be upset about the comments and upset about what people say. And then she'll use that upset to fuel a cycle. It's clear as day to me. But, I was in it deep, so I know these things. But, glitter and lasers, a huge, no pun intended, but a very good example. Glitter and lasers is a great example of this. She does something ridiculous. Her audience gets mad. I will never forget when she was on that cruise ship and she went live and all she had was support in her comments. And she was like, they're going to hate this. They're going to hate this. I know it. I know it. And she was looking for hate. And when she didn't get it, she got off the live. She wanted to be reinforced. She wanted to find something to be upset about. So I'm just saying, if you're wondering why you can't help these people, it's because literally it is by design. Literally. And people don't like it when I say it because I'm blowing it all up, basically. I've done that for over a year, just blowing up all the bullshit behind it. But that's what it is. It's bullshit. And that's what this whole podcast is.
People, and it's just so unequivocal. It's almost like we can't even argue. It's almost like you can't even argue about that. So let's just put that data aside for a second and say, okay.
You can definitely argue about it. I have argued about it constantly. Weight loss is possible. Sustainable weight loss is possible, especially if you don't have BING, then it's very, very possible. You would be shocked. However, most of the people that they're looking at, they do have it, especially if they're super morbidly obese, which is why we have statistics that say people who are super morbidly obese are extremely unlikely to get out of it naturally. It's because they have this problem. And for some reason that I don't understand, our institutions completely ignore it because they're hyper obsessed with the overly reductive side, which is stupid. And that is something that is a systemic issue, and that is something that should be pointed at and ridiculed and made to be ridiculous. There is no reason why institutions should be ignoring BINGE, especially when it is far more common. There is no reason, unless if those people literally doing the research also have the problem, which is also likely possible. And you need to test for that. People are very, very biased. If they are in the issue, they will fudge numbers. They lie. I'm telling you guys, people lie all the time with that issue. And sometimes even if they're on the overly reductive side, they'll encourage BINGE too, because it's about encouraging the system. It's about encouraging the toxic ritualistic world, because they don't want to lose it either. So you can have a lot of dietitians, and a lot of dietitians flat out admit it. They'll say, oh, I haven't EFA by letter D passed. It's not passed because of the way that they're talking about things. It's weird. And so you have to be really skeptical and look at the physical evidence. I always tell you guys, look at the physical evidence of a person. When we look at, I'm going to keep naming names. If you look at Rosie, Quirky Love Rosie, has she changed significantly? How long has it been? She's been active and doing this since 2023. To sustain that size, it takes a lot. She's still BINGing. And people don't like that, but when it's on that level, it's very obvious. You cannot hide it. And I understand, because some of you guys, you know, when you know it, you know it. Some of you guys in my audience, you guys have dealt with like Mia, and you can see the signs in other people in ways that even I can't really see. But I've heard a lot of accusations when it comes to William, and I believe it. I could believe it. I believe it because I see the way he talks about these things. He's nuts. I mean, I will name names. I don't give a fuck. I can literally give you examples. Those 4 examples right there. You have to be careful with this kind of stuff. You know, like, if somebody sounds crazy, they might be. Like, if somebody says weight loss is impossible, it's impossible to lose weight naturally, that is a massive red flag. I will just say that. It is a huge, huge, huge red flag. Huge. And look for, another thing I would look for is blanket statements. Massively blanketed statements that don't acknowledge any individuality within people. That's not good. Or extreme black and white. So, you know, if you know me, I'm very anti-seed oil, but if somebody tells you that if you have 1 drop, it's going to kill you, that person's crazy. That's not true. I will always tell you guys, the dose is in the poison is in the dose. If you're not having a lot of it, it's not going to do anything. Now, for me, I've had enough for an entire lifetime. Like, I'm done. You know, I might have a little bit here or there. Like, I think I had a salad a couple years ago that had like blue cheese dressing that might have had it. I think when I went to In-N-Out, their burgers have it in it. So I had a little bit, but it's not like tons. You know, you're not going to see me eating Takis every week again. You're not going to see me doing that anymore. It's over. That time of my life is done. So it's like, and it's never going to be a staple of my diet. And I don't care if, you know, I've seen dietitians go on these crazy rants about how great seed oils are. Those studies that they list, they are about a tiny amount over 12 weeks. So you need to look at things. They're not about massively eating it every single day for, you know, 6 months. Tell me how you're going to do with seed oils if you're doing that every day. But they will say, oh, well, don't eat fried food. Okay, why though? Because these fats are bad in large quantities. That's why the research shows if you're having tons of fried food, it will be a problem because it's in those oils. But people can't think. They think too, like, I don't know the word. I want to say, like, they can't think big picture enough a lot of times with these topics. It's like you look at one study, one circumstance, one this, one that. You know, when I was super morbidly obese, if I had even a drop of a seed oil, it massively inflamed me. If I have it now, even when I was class 1 or getting towards the end of morbid, it didn't happen. I was okay. I went to my friend's wedding, one of my best friend's wedding, in August of 2024, and I had the food at the wedding, and I even had some wine. And my friends made fun of me, and they were like, "Whoa, you're such a drinker," and and then they were like, "You're so brat," But it's like, yeah, I had it, and I was fine. I didn't go into a spiral. I didn't swell up 10 pounds. I didn't have any of that shit happen. Like when I was huge, where it would happen. It's like people they don't understand. Like sometimes you have to be really strict, and then sometimes you don't. But it's individual, and I always told you guys that. I would say they're not good for you, and I don't think they are. But again, everybody has things that is not good for them sometimes. It's just how often, how much. Alcohol isn't good for you either. Does that mean you're never going to have a drink in your entire life? Probably not. You see? You have to consider these things and think about it rationally and make smart decisions and actually process. And when it comes to downsizing, you have to do what works. You have to do what's sustainable and what you can do and what happens. A lot of my dieting advice I've given, which has been relatively limited, it's been about managing hunger. So I will say things like, maybe up your saturated fat a bit. That might help you be more satiated. Because a lot of people avoid saturated fat completely. There's a lot of fat-soluble vitamins in saturated fats, especially like in cheese and, things like that people say to avoid. It's like you have to think about these things. Think about the whole picture. I just recently had to start supplementing zinc as well because I think my iron supplementation is lowering my zinc reserves. It's lowering my zinc. It's like you have to think of the whole picture. But I can't sit here and tell you every single piece of every single puzzle for you. You have to think about things. Everything interacts. And that's why it's complicated in that sense. But it is also simple that at the end of the day, it goes back to calories in, calories out. But I always think about it beyond that. Well, what is sustainable? Let's talk about satiety. That's a major barrier. Satiety and exhaustion. So if you're hungry or tired, those are your two physical barriers. If we're talking the mental barriers, it's the toxic ritualistic. So we talk about all the time. I'm in your corner. I want you to do this. I don't care if you have a seed oil to do it. I don't care. But if you're struggling, then I'm going to tell you about that so that you know. But anyways, let's continue.
Sure. At the end of the day, everyone has the right to pursue interventions, whether they're data driven or not.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say, sure, let's start there. I think what people are missing is that diversity.
Yeah.
Is that sure, Remy Bader has the right to do that, and I want somebody who is who did not make that choice, because that person absolutely exists. There are plenty of people in larger bodies who either A, don't want to be in a thinner body, or B, do not want to go through the experience that they might have to do to undergo under intentional weight loss, whether that's a physical thing or it's a recovery thing. Like for people who have eating disorders, I think I could say with a lot of confidence, they absolutely should not be taking GLP-1s. I don't want to speak for every.
I don't want to say absolutely, but I think that it needs to be for diabetes. You need to separate it from your mind. You need to not view it as a part of a weight loss regime if you have the toxic ritualistic. So I wouldn't say absolutely, but again, that's another thing. Absolutely, absolutely. It's like, no, not absolutely. No. But if you're having a lot of insulin resistance, if you're having issues, particularly with insulin, then maybe it would help actually, because it might not be as toxic ritualistic as you think. It might just be hunger and exhaustion, which Ozempic will help with the hunger. But if you're like really in it, like, and especially if you're going to manipulate your usage of it and all that, you should not be on it. And there are definitely levels to it. Somebody can be barely toxically ritualistic. Somebody can just have certain beliefs, but not actually be diagnosable or not be at a level that meets criteria. They would probably be okay on Ozempic. You know, it's like, you have to look at that stuff too. It's very individual, case by case. But again, that's on the responsibility of a doctor. That's on a doctor. Why are we ignoring the INGE? Why are we not looking at it, right? That's another institution letting people down that's not considering this. They should know about this. It's not like it's not very common in super morbidly obese people. It's like, you should know about that as an expert. You should know to look. You should look at somebody and make sure and have some kind of clearance that they're sane enough to handle a GLP-1 for weight loss. You know, you don't even have to be completely sane, but you need to be sane enough. Which, you know, there are levels to this. There really, really are. And I've told you guys numerous times, it would not have worked for me at all. It would not have been an answer. And for a lot of people, it isn't. So then what happens? Oh, I try it. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. Oh my gosh, it was this horrible experience. Now I'll just continue to use that experience for why I continue to be INGE. It can become a massive reinforcement experience and another huge letdown, and the melodrama comes out, and oh my gosh, and oh, da 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 da. When it's like, well, maybe you could have taken less of a dose. Maybe you could have had a stable dose. Maybe you could have stopped BINGing while you were on it. Maybe there's a lot of things you could have done. You know, that would have made it a different experience. Or maybe it just isn't going to work for you because the mental health isn't there. It would not have worked for me. With all of the brain stuff I had going on in 2023 of coming down off of that constant cycle, especially after stopping it for years and finally pursuing sustainable weight loss, it was too much for my brain. It would have been too much. I needed to have absolute control over my pacing. So Ozempic never would have worked for me. And that's something that people who are the crusaders, the warriors of Ozempic, the warriors of GLP-1, you need to stop pushing it on people because it goes back to you too. Don't force somebody to take it. Don't push somebody to take it. Stop promoting. Stop evangelizing. You can talk about your experience. It worked for me because this, and this. But you can also talk about how to make the experience better. I think those are great things to do. How to help, how to this, how to that. But it's like, don't be pushing drugs on people. It's not appropriate. It's a violation of boundary. And when I was bigger, people were telling me, are you on it? Are you on it? You should take it. You should take it. It wouldn't have been good for me. I told you guys, I was crazy. With all of the fluctuation in my brain, I probably would have jumped off of a building or something if I took Ozempic. Like you cannot, you know, people's experiences are different. Why was it so bad? Because I was so badly in it. You know, and it's like, if somebody is so severely into it, honey, please just take a diabetic dose for the diabetes you likely have and separate it out of your brain from downsizing. Don't consider it a part of that. That's my advice for somebody who's severe. Take it for the diabetes and just don't consider it a part of that. Because if you separate it in your mind, then you're not going to abuse it. That's my advice.
every single person, but I think certainly my colleagues in the eating disorder space, they're advocating, and rightfully so, for a black label warning on GLP-1s because they trigger relapses and they lead to new eating disorder cases. So, yeah,
I don't believe that. I think, yeah, there's just not enough knowledge about it. Because it's not necessarily even a relapse if you're never out of the cycle. Like, you're just in it the whole time. And, like, the longer I have had out of it, I'm like, oh, I've been tempted to relapse a couple of times since being out of it. Like, about 3 times. I've had 3 major temptations, but I said no each time because I knew it wouldn't work. But all those other times, all the cycles, all the I'm clean now, oh, now I'm an addict, you know, all that stuff, that's just all a part of it. It's like you're never out of it. You never left. You never left. Like, I think about when I was keto and I'd look in the mirror and I'd just be like, I don't care if this is healthy or not. I don't want to be fat anymore. I don't want to look like this anymore. I don't even care if it's healthy. I'll worry about that later. I was still in it, you know? If you're having a thought like that, babe, it's not good.
I think in some ways I'm like, a lot of the anger goes back to the lack of choices that this customer and this follower just generally has to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, when we talk about like how some people, some individuals kind of become like the unintentional face of GLP-1s,
Right.
I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this episode is because we've been thinking a lot about Serena Williams and how she recently became a spokesperson for Roe and basically has been doing ads of her like showing herself injecting herself with GLP-1s. And on top of the fact that like we as a team were very kind of intrigued by the fact that her husband, Alexis Ohanian, is a investor in Roe, so there's some money there.
Right.
But
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
just
I think we need to consider the fact that there's drug ads, period. I think that that's something we need to consider. I think it's bad. So I'm not very much a fan of any of it because I think regardless, it's drug pushing. You're pushing it on people. I don't think that that's right. You know, you shouldn't be doing that with stuff like that. So I just think, I don't care if it's GLP-1. I don't care what it is. Like, it needs to stop.
So I think, at least for me, I was just kind of shocked and maybe
They
a
don't
little
care, though.
sad about it just because, you know, Serena Williams is known for winning. She's known for being the GOAT. She is known for being, you know, this physical presence, this powerful person and body in both, like, on and off the court. And yet it almost seems like there was a voice inside her head that probably was there when she was a young tennis player that was telling her how her body looked and how it played. And a lot of it played into, like, racist stereotypes and a lot of commentary that you would think that someone who is so excellent could defeat that. But at the same time, I think a lot of us know what it's like to have a negative voice in our head that is louder than anything anyone else can say. And I just think that it's moments like these where I really took a step back and went like, wow, like if
I just think Serena would hate this conversation you're having. That's what I'm going to say.
Serena Williams is turning to this, I wonder how that is. And I think what surprises me most is that, like, I'm seeing on Reddit, I'm seeing, like, more positive responses than I thought. And I wasn't sure if that was because it was Serena or if it was because maybe there's just a greater acceptance of GLP-1s, but I don't know. What about you? Like, did you have any thoughts about Serena and her ad campaign recently?
I had such an interesting emotion. It was just grief, like this massive punch in the gut grief where I had this feeling of like, man, our culture teaches women to hate their bodies. Like, wow. I mean, like, and it's like, you know, I think on the one hand, when you see,
I think it's that your family teaches you to hate your body. Like, I'm just going to be real. I think that that kind of line is familial. It's more of a familial thing, which that's a whole other topic, which a lot of people, again, they don't want to talk about it because it's icky.
an influencer who's in a larger body. Like fat phobia is so pervasive. When you see Serena Williams taking GLP-1s, I feel like it unveils this level to this frenzy that is extremely sad and that's extremely far-reaching, and that has these deeper, more sinister roots of like sexism, racism, like all of these things that are at the base of diet culture to begin with. But it's like I think for me, the game changed in my mind when I saw that selfie of her, and it was like, I think the emotion went from a lot of rage, again, mostly at the companies, really truly pretty much 100% at the companies, to this sort of like softer grief feeling, which I think anger, in therapy they say that, like, when you get through the anger and into the sadness, that's kind of like really what a lot of this is about.
Why is your therapist not challenging the fact that you're angry at all about it? Another institutional failure. Why is your therapist not recognizing that this is toxic ritualistic? Another institutional failure. Look at how many we're finding in this one podcast. Yet another one. Who's your therapist, Virgie? Because they suck. How could they not recognize the signs? How could they not see that this line of reasoning of yours is pathological? Why are they not telling you? Why are they affirming it? Why? Not appropriate.
Yeah, and before we like move on towards, wrapping up the conversation, I do want to like pause on race a little bit and talk about, I mean, this is like asking you like a 101 type question, but how do fat phobia and racism interact?
Yeah, I mean, it's complex. There's a lot of layers. I think in a lot of ways, fat phobia becomes a dog whistle for racism. And that's been around for a long time. I think when we're talking about
this talking point has been around for a long time.
When I think about who these companies are going after, we often think of celebrity. We think of the celebrity face. We think of white people. But when we're talking about who they're trying to make money off of, we're talking about people of color.
Yeah.
Who have been told their entire lives by their doctor, by their nutritionist, by the culture that something is very wrong with their relationship to food, and there's something very wrong with their bodies. And when you think about the ways in which racism already undercuts body autonomy, already makes you feel like something's wrong.
Your therapist isn't even challenging your toxic ritualistic thoughts, Virgie. I mean, oh gosh, she is just so scammy. She's such a liar. I really feel sorry for anybody that believes her. I really do.
Wrong with your body. It's much easier to have these other messages that further pathologize you and your body, which, I mean, fat phobia definitely does that, And so I think that also we can go back to the history of even the construction of whiteness and racialization, which I feel like, I often think of the book Fearing the Black Body, which talks a lot about this, but it talks about how fat phobia really emerged as part of enslaved.
I just wonder why she's so, why is she, it's maybe because she's a woman of color, but it's like, why is she so pushing and reinforcing towards people of color to be in the toxic ritualistic? Like, why are you so invested in that, Virgie? And typically it has to do with a projection of the self. So I think you tend to do it most. That's why it happens a lot with women, for example, because there's a lot of women that have these issues. There's a lot that don't too, which that needs to be recognized. But I'm just saying the majority don't. But a lot of people that are very vocal about having the toxic ritualistic, whether they realize that's what it is or not, they tend to be women. So they push really hard on women because I think it's like you see the other person as like an extension of yourself, and you'll see like men that are more toxically ritualistic, they will push it onto other men too. So I think it's like the more similar you are, the more you want them to fail, or the more you want to hold them down. It's really awful. It's horrible. But I do see that in the toxic ritualistic. But I've always told you guys, I think it comes from a sense of self-hatred that runs very commonly in the toxic ritualistic. Oh my gosh, my stomach is getting upset. It's having my iron pill. My iron pill is like, bitch. And I'm like, I know. But anyways.
People and enslaved people's bodies being in contact with your white European bodies. And it was this immediate kind of almost animalization that occurred vis-a-vis fat phobia. And so in general, I think fatness is overlaid like significantly with stereotypes around race, like laziness, like, you know, again, just general wrongness, immorality, all these things that we've been grappling with around racialization and racial politics for a very, very long time. And I have to kind of anecdotally bring it in here and say, I work with a lot of people in the food justice
But
space.
she can't see that saying that people of color are fat is also stereotypical or racist. She can't see that. You know, that's the interesting thing to me. Or especially they lean so heavily on Black people. You know, being Black is being fat. They will literally say that, which is so like, what the actual fuck? You know? It's like, that's not a stereotype then. That isn't one, Virgie. Like, I can think of many Black people that are not fat if I just think about it in my brain. How many I've seen throughout my lifetime. It is just crazy to say things like that. Like, but, you know, it all goes into fueling it. And the only comfort I can give to people who hear this and are disturbed is that it's not about you. It's about them. It's about her. It's the way that she's choosing to reinforce herself, which is really horrible. But, you know, it's just horrible. But it's an internal problem she has. It's not about you. It's herself. It's, you'll do anything to keep that going. Absolutely anything.
Somehow work in food empowerment. And
She's
one of
really
the things
severe.
that's become really clear is that this culture believes that Black and brown people do not know how to eat. And that the culture needs to teach them, and specifically that white culture needs to teach them. And so I think that this is so pervasive. And so when you're talking about who's being targeted, it really is Black and brown people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because you're mentioning that these are long-standing bias.
Are there no fat women within fat acceptance that are white? Can we just talk about that? Are they not telling people how to eat? I mean, it's stupid. The hot argument is dumb, period. It's just stupid. People tell people how to eat all the time. It doesn't matter what race they are. People make comments or people talk about food or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is, like, for her to act like, I just don't even know. I don't even know what she's trying to act like. Like, I'm not even going to try to understand it at this point.
Yes.
And so that highlights, again, perhaps the ineffectiveness of, you know, a movement versus a moment, and that we can't meet something like that with a moment. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened with, like, pop feminism, where this long-standing movement, it was like, oh, we can make money off this. And it was around the same time as body positivity. There were, you know, the feminist slogan T-shirts were happening, and then that falls away too. I wonder if you, when it comes to moving forward, and I realize I'm about to ask a question of, like, how do we fix this entire thing? But maybe more so, how can we approach something like this as a movement rather than as a moment when it comes to, like, continuing this act?
I would say we get people out of the toxic ritualistic, or we try our best. You can't force somebody out, but you don't have to reinforce it. So we as a culture stop reinforcing it. I think that's one of the biggest steps. The more people that we can get to stop reinforcing it, the more it will die. It requires constant gaslighting, constant self-deception, constant lies. The more that we can call out reinforcement groups, like fat acceptance in general, is basically a huge toxic ritualistic reinforcement mechanism. But we can look at the overly reductive side too. I know Hollywood has definitely been that way. For example, that is an institution or something that has really pushed the toxic ritualistic onto the masses, we need to speak out against those things and to just keep things realistic, as realistic as possible. And I would say that that's really just a cultural non-reinforcement. That would do a lot. That would help a lot. But what you get now is people jumping in front of a car to protect a fat person from accountability. That's what you have now, and that's not going to work at all. It hasn't worked at all. But if we don't reinforce the craziness of the toxic ritualistic, that will actually help. It can help weaken it in a person over time because it takes a lot to sustain. So if it's not able to sustain itself, then it will die.
Activism.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the iteration of body positivity that we're talking about, where it's highly commercialized, highly visible. You go to Target and you're like, I feel body positive today. Like it's like, that iteration of it is a very specific chapter, but it's just one chapter.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see that chapter again. But I think it's important to remember that this is a longstanding political movement that's about freedom and liberation and not about, I mean, at the end of the day, like I monetize my content too, but that there's something more abiding about it that is very humble and it's not glamorous. It's not like, it's not.
No, there's something pathological about it. So at the end of the day, it's not about money. It's not about politics. It's not about any of it. It is about the DIS order. It's about a pathology that people desperately cling to, that they don't want to get rid of. And if it's not profitable, if it's not sane, it doesn't matter. If it's not politically viable, it doesn't matter. It never matters. It will just take another form. That's all. It shifts. It shape shifts. That's the other part of it too. We do need like a ubiquitous knowledge about this type of thing just so that people can recognize it even if it changes skin. If it changes its skin like a snake and it looks different. It used to be more politically right-wing to be fat acceptance. Now it's more politically left-wing. Like it just changed. It shifted. It's a shapeshifter. But spoiler alert, there's still tons of fat right-wingers in the country. It doesn't matter. It's just going to take whatever form in the years that come, So we have to recognize that, and you have to see it regardless of where it's coming from. It's the same thing. It's not, it's Pennywise. You have to recognize Pennywise for what it is, okay?
Not like New York Fashion Week and it's not that. There's a political heart to this that still exists and that has existed for a very long time. Certainly fat activism has existed since the 1960s. And I think that it's really powerful to refuse to, I know we're watching all the headlines about it, but to sort of refuse to accept that body positivity is dead, because that's like claiming, I feel like it's on par with claiming that feminism is dead or that anti-racism is dead. Like a highly commercialized moment.
She's really trying to be an activist, because I have seen that a lot. And I do find that interesting that a lot of articles and stuff are saying it's dead. I'm like, oh, so you're conceding it. But I don't think it's honest. But Virgie's saying, no, we have to take it up and keep going. So that's interesting. She is trying to lead this movement, or she's really trying at this time to lead it.
That was temporary, and at the end of the day, when there's a high interface with capitalism, it's always going to be ephemeral, because at the end of the day, they're always going to want to go back to pushing the same stuff, the stuff they know how to sell. And there's so much history behind that, and so much there's so much behind that makes people always want to call anything that's like liberation oriented or justice oriented. There's this desire.
I would say the same. I would say it's the case with the toxic ritualistic. It will always evolve. It's the same thing. Remember, whether it's overly reductive, binge, it's all the same. At the end of the day, it comes from the same, it all has the same roots, and it'll shift and trends will change and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. In that sense, like it's still the toxic ritualistic, and they'll do the same things every time. So if they want us to switch from being overly permissive to overly reductive, it's the same thing. It's the same game, and you have to just get out of it and not be a part of it. And then just don't reinforce it.
I hear to call it a trend, but I kind of just want to tell people that it isn't going away, that if these politics and these ideas still resonate with you,
The toxic ritualistic is not going away. I know it's not, Virgie. I'm aware.
find the people who have, who are weathering through this storm. Again, and I don't want to like vilify anybody who's on GLP-1s for weight loss, but I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of us who this is a very, very core part of our values. And it's okay if that's
Identity.
not your value, but there are plenty of people for whom it is and plenty of people for whom it
And
will.
don't you dare not reinforce me, is what she's saying. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. And I'm saying no, don't reinforce her. Don't ever reinforce her. Don't ever reinforce anybody.
Continue to be.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys again soon. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.